Hi, welcome back to another video. So as many of you know, I recently did the West Highland Way. It was brilliant, got back about 5 weeks ago, and I did it over 3.5 days. Really do recommend it. If you haven't seen that video, I do recommend watching those first. I'll leave a link to the playlist above. It's over 4 days, and you'll also find there's a kit video in there as well, of the sort of kit I took. But I got so many questions when I came back, so I thought I'll put this video together, I'll break it down into sections, and I can go through some of the logistics, the finances, some things to consider about the hike, what worked well, kit, things like that. And then if you're looking to do the West Highland Way, hopefully this video you'll find it useful. So what is the West Highland Way? Well, basically, it's a really iconic walk, and it's Scotland's first long distance hike, established in 1980. Same as me, that's when I was born. But basically it's a 96-mile hike, and it goes from a town just north of Glasgow called Milngavie, and it's going to take you all the way to Fort William. So one of the biggest considerations that you're gonna have in doing this hike is how do you get to the start and how do you get home from the end, because obviously there's different start and end points. So I'll tell you what I did and why I made my choices, and then I'll go through some of the other options you've got as well. So at the start in Milngavie, just a few minutes from the start point, you've got a train station. So if you want to get a train there, that's a good option. Jump off the train. It's literally a 5-minute walk and you're at the start point. And then from the end, when you finish in Fort William, you've got a series of coaches, trains, things like that to get you back to probably Glasgow. And from there, you can get your connecting trains or whatever it may be. Thing is, if you're going to book it in advance, you need to know when you're coming back. And what I found was, because I did it last minute, the trains were super expensive. From Preston, it was going to cost me about £30 to get to Milngavie, which isn't too bad, £20–30. But then coming back, because I was only booking it a few days before, the train was going to be £107, which is ridiculous. I just couldn't afford that. Plus, because I was hiking on my own, I didn't know how long the hike was going to take, so I would have to book it last minute. And yeah, it just didn't work for me. So I made the decision to drive. Driving is a really good option, and it's probably the cheapest way of doing it. So I set off from my house at 1:30 in the morning in Preston, and I drove the 3.5-hour drive to Milngavie, stopping at Midges on the way. And literally right at the train station, you've got a big car park, and it's free. It's completely free, and you can park there for the duration. So I'm glad to say when I did get back to my car, it was still there. There was no issues. It looks really safe where you are, so that is a really good option. I already had petrol in my car, so I didn't put any petrol in. I managed to get there and back. So that was free to get to the start point. At the end of the hike, I finished about 12 o'clock, took the pictures, had a look on my phone and thought, how the hell do I get home? So I managed to find that just about another mile back, walking, there's a coach station. I got a direct coach and it cost me £39.50, I think it was, on trip.com. So the coach, I think it went for about an hour and a half, and it was a brilliant way of doing it because you get it right in Milngavie. There's a Morrison's there, so you can get some, and there's a Tesco, so you can get some snacks and things. You'll recognise parts of the journey coming back, goes through Bridge of Orchy, Loch Lomond, and you just recognise places you were walking, so that's nice to see. And then from Glasgow, I got 2 connecting trains, only very short trains that got me back to Milngavie, and then straight off there, I was in my car. I had about a 3-hour journey home, and I got home about 10:10 at night. So it was a long day, considering I've been up since 6 walking. But that's how I did it. So my travel for the whole hike cost me £40. What it did mean is I didn't get my pint at the end. Gutted. I had to rush coming back. But I mean, that's why I did it, and that's an option for you, but look into it, and they're the different options. Right, the next section I'm going to cover is duration. Now, as you know, I did it over 3.5 days. That's a personal choice. It's not for everyone. Typically, people will do this hike over 6 to 10 days, I would say, and that's probably a really good way to do it. But first of all, let me tell you why I did it over 3.5, because I've had a load of comments. Some people saying brilliant, some people saying you're an idiot, you're going too quick. But let me explain. You know, if you watch my channel, love long distance hikes. I love being out in the open on my own. I love the challenge. I love ticking them off, ticking them off the list. But the challenge is a big one for me. And it's a challenge not only to complete the hike, it's to push myself out of my comfort zone and see what I can achieve. So personally for me, pushing and doing high mileage is something I enjoy and something I just decided to do for this. 3.5 days is obviously, it takes a lot out of your body, as you saw on the hike. I did have an injury. I don't think that was necessarily due to the distance, because I've done those distances many times before. It was a combination of things. I was running with an existing injury on my knee, which probably caused me limping, which then caused my shin splints. Another consideration for that as well, which comes back to you planning on doing the hike, is time off work. Now, I'm not working at the moment, so it was fine for me. I had plenty of time. I could have took a week if I needed to. But what you've got to bear in mind is the longer you spend on the trail, you know, you're going to have your food or think about food each day. Maybe not while camping, maybe you stay in accommodation. So for every day that you stay, it's going to be more money as well. Decide what works for you. If this is your first long distance hike, take a good amount of time. Don't rush it. You want to make sure you complete it. But for me, it was advantageous to push a little bit to get back that little bit sooner, which obviously saved me money, you know, but I obviously did end up with an injury. So that is an important one. Another important consideration to make is, are you going to go solo? Are you going to go with friends? Are you going to carry your own gear and wild camp? Or are you going to stay somewhere? Again, it's all personal choice. I love doing these solo, probably for my mental health, but one of the key things and the benefits of going on your own, if you're thinking, oh, is this something you can do, is it's your own freedom. You can walk completely at your own pace. Be it fast, be it slow, you want to stop 50 times, you want to take a day of rest, you've got that option if you go on your own. There's a few considerations. Obviously, if you go with friends, it's brilliant. It's a different experience, isn't it? You know, you get to chat, you get to laugh along the way. However, if you're doing it the general way, which is south to north, you're going to meet lots of people on the trail. So you get to talk to people. You're never completely on your own. You know, chat to people on the way, get that experience. But just bear in mind, if you are on your own, you know, your mental health, you're the only one who can push yourself. You know, you've got to get up in that morning when you've got aching legs and you've got to keep going. That solitude, could be long times in your tent at night. Just bear that in mind. But I'm telling you, I've done lots of them before and it's fantastic. Just to know that you're on your own, you get out there, it's really rewarding and I do recommend it. Now, if you're going to wild camp, a lot of considerations there. Gear, you got to carry it, it's heavy on your back. But you can stop when you want. If the weather's bad and you decide I'm going to take a rest day or I'm not going to go as far today, or maybe you're walking and think, God, I'm doing really well today, I'm going to do more mileage. You've got that flexibility. There's a lot to be said for that. I think it's really, really good. And being Scotland as well, wild camping, super easy there. I'll go into that later because there are some sections you can't camp, but it gives you lots of flexibility. Another great way of doing it is you can use like a shuttle service for someone to carry your bag to the next stage, like a company. So you just walk with a day pack, walk in a section, and at the other side, if it's accommodation or whatever you've got booked, you know, your bag gets taken to there. But for every day you do, it is going to rack up in cost. But, you know, you get a shower, you get a bed, you've got a good night's sleep at the end of the night. But just bear in mind, if you stay in accommodation, you've got to get to that point. I had glorious weather. It was amazing. But if the weather comes in, you struggle, you get an injury, you know, you still got to get to that end point. So just bear that in mind. I've got a kit video above where I talk about what I take on a long distance hike. Now watch that video and just try and learn from the principles of what to take. Don't focus on my gear. I've been doing this a long time. I've upgraded gear. I've probably got some expensive gear and some budget gear too. So don't worry about brands, but you know, look at the sort of things I took, watch the videos, but again, don't worry about brand. Now, what I found on that hike, the most common tent that I saw more than any other was the Durston X-Mid Solid, or maybe just the X-Mid basic tent, trekking pole tent. A good alternative to that is a Lanshan 2 Pro or a Lanshan 2. They're basically very lightweight tents, they pack super small and they set up with trekking poles. Really good, really light, and if you're using trekking poles, which I do advise, that's a really good option. They're around the £200 to £300 mark, or the Lanshans are quite a bit cheaper. However, don't worry about gear. I saw the probably second most common tent was something like an OEX Fox 2, and they're about £100 or sometimes on offer. Or you've got a Vango Banshee, or you know, just an OEX or a Decathlon. You can do it with anything. You don't need anything expensive. All I'd say is don't go and buy an expensive tent to do this. You can do it with anything, but don't take a massive tent. I saw people with 3-man tents and things like that. Now, that's going to be bulkier. It's going to be heavy on your back, which is going to make it harder. Plus, you're going to find it more difficult to pitch because you're going to need a bigger space. But you honestly can do it with anything. Anything that you're comfortable with. Don't worry too much about gear. Firstly, trekking poles. Essential. You can get trekking poles from 30 quid. They're super cheap on Amazon. Get what you want. If you're interested what I used, I had the Harrier Helvellyn Carbon Pro poles. So they're fixed length, 120 centimetres. They were fantastic. I could not have done this hike without poles. And that's not just because of my injury, which obviously I really needed them for that, but I use them anyway. Great for momentum, especially when you're carrying gear. Poles, poles, poles. If you need a tip on how to use them, let me know. I might make a video to show you, but trekking poles, essential. The next thing to mention is my bag. Now, this is super expensive, but I thought I'd mention it because it's what I use and it was brilliant. So I had a brand new pack for this. I had my Atom Packs Pulse EP40 and it was fantastic. It was brilliant. But again, you can use any bag, but some of the features that work particularly well were the pockets on the front for my water bottles. I could easily reach my water in the side. I could get my trekking poles in and out of the side bags without having to take my bag off my back. Everything fit into it in that 40 litre. I had my stretch mesh on the back to put things. It was super comfy. That worked really, really well for me. For a tent, I used my X-Dome 1 Plus. Fantastic. First time I've used it on a long distance hike and it was brilliant. I usually use my X-Mid, but I decided to use the X-Dome this time because it does come with poles. It's a little bit heavier, only about 1 kilo, but it's freestanding as well. And that worked great. I think there was only 2 out of the 3 nights where I didn't even put the guy lines out. I literally just put 5 pegs in, so 2 on each side, peg one of the doors out, or maybe 6 pegs, peg the either side out, and it worked great. So tent was brilliant, lots of room, no condensation. That worked really, really well. I mentioned my water bottle, so I took a little 600ml water bottle. I'll leave the link below. That worked brilliant. Throughout the hike, although I had a 850 water bottle on the side, I had a 650 on my chest, and that carried my water and my electrolytes, which are really, really important. So throughout the hike, any opportunity I had to top up water, I would fill up the bottle, stick my electrolytes in, and that was my go-to. It fit in my pocket great, and I prefer that to a water bladder because you can see how much water you've got left and you can see how much you're drinking. So if you've got some kind of water bottle handy, that's important. And last but not least, a really random thing, poo bags. It was such a last minute thing and I didn't include them in that other video, but I bought them from a corner shop. They were 2 quid. These little just poo bags. They smell amazing. They're perfect for rubbish or at the end of the night. I know people like to hang the socks in the tent. It's not for me. Socks stink after the hike. So what I did at the end of every night, I take my socks off and I put them in a poo bag, just tie them off and just leave them in my bag or leave them in the tent. They smell beautiful, keep it nice and fresh in there. Then in the morning you can take them out. And then obviously any rubbish I had, I put them in poo bags. Take your shit with you. Gleave no trace, as I always say. But just put your rubbish or your wipes and things into those poo bags, hook them onto your bag, and then when you get to a stop-off point, dump it in the bin. But they were my top pieces of kit, but all my kit worked great. So what did I use food on this one? Not a lot. I took a cooking pot, which I took an alcohol stove on this one, just to keep things lightweight. Spoiler, I only used it once. So there was the one night when I was just on the way to Bridge of Orchid and I camped at the side of the road. That night I made myself a couple of mug shots and that's the only thing I did. I took tea and coffee. I didn't even use it. I didn't even probably need to take a stove. But what you'll find is along the route, there's plenty of places to get food, and water as well if you want to buy it, or drinks and ice cream. I didn't plan for this one. I didn't know much about the route, but if you take a map or you mark on some points where there's shops, if you've got the money, obviously it's going to cost, but you can budget to think, right, I don't need to carry any food and I can get a sandwich here, I can get my lunch here, I can get my dinner, I can get snacks. Yeah, you really don't need to take food. I was going to cover this later, but I'll cover budget now. I'll just throw it into this section. So for this whole hike, I spent £100 and a few pence. So my return travel was £40, and even £10 of that was my ankle sleeve that I had to buy. So actually I spent £50 over my 4 days. I didn't spend a lot at all. I managed to do this whole trip on a budget, and £100 is pretty good for 4 days. I'd say until you get to Loch Lomond. I don't remember many past there, but there are quite a few honesty boxes. and they're pretty good. So you can get little bits of snacks, cakes, drinks, boiled eggs. Who'd have thought it? You tend to get boiled eggs for £1. They were brilliant. I bought 4 of those on the trip. Apples, fruit, you know, you don't always have to eat crap, but you can take some cash. That's probably advisable. However, if you haven't got cash, don't worry, because every single one of these points that I saw, you could scan and do it over PayPal or transfer the money. So don't worry, but if you do take a little bit of cash with you, it might be helpful just in case. So for this hike, and I do recommend carrying some kind of water filter, but I took my Katadyn B3. I take it on every single hike regardless. However, I didn't use it once. So what you'll find on this hike, which is really worth knowing, is there's lots of places to top up your water. More so in the first third or first maybe 2/3, a little bit less in the last section. But what you'll find, like at the start point, there's these water top up points. It's brilliant. You see them all over the show. Or if you stop in a shop, if you stop in a cafe, there's pubs, there's things like that, go in and ask to top up your water. Bridge of Orchid, there was one on the side, there was somewhere in the middle of Loch Lomond, but use the water top up points. I was fine throughout the whole hike. I managed my water with an 850 in the side and a 600ml. I'd only say the last section is the time where I had a little bit, I probably could have done a little bit more water, but other than that, I was fine. So if you want to take 1 litre, 2 litres, whatever works for you, but that's what I used. Mapping, let's talk about that first, how you map for the route and what I did. So I use a Garmin Fenix 8 watch, absolutely love it. I use it for 100% of my hikes. I've used these type of watches for 5 years now and they're fantastic. So you can download the route from online. If you have a search for West Highland Way, GPX, you can download a file and you can load it up onto your phone and put it onto, you know, All Trails, Komoot, Hiker, OS Maps, Strava, whatever you've got to follow that. But what I did, I looked at that route and I manually plotted mine on OS Maps because I wanted to make sure it was correct. So I literally plotted it, the whole route myself, and also any little changes you want to make, because there is an option of Conic Hill or not. So whatever you want to decide to do, I plotted my own route, sent it through to my watch, and I had that loaded up. The way it works on your watch is at the start of your hike, you load up the route, click go, and you can have it buzzing for your notifications, but you can follow the map, it records your steps. Then at the end of the day, I would stop it, it would save that, upload it to Strava, which you guys get to see, link below. And then the next day, I would just load the route back up, it knows where you are, and you just carry on. So you don't have to think, oh, I need 10 different sections. You just have one route and just walk whatever you want to walk, and the next day, start it again. Obviously, it's advisable if you want to take a map and compass. However, the route is really easy to navigate. There's lots of signs, there's lots of people doing it. Did I need my GPS? Probably not. I think there was a couple of sections where it was helpful, but yeah, if you're not sure how to map reading things, it's very easy to follow. Really well signposted, but I always advise have a backup on your phone, have a power bank and a backup, things like that, or a map. But that was quite easy. It's normally expected that you go over Conic Hill, although you don't have to. I know a lot of people who don't go up that. And if the weather isn't great, you might decide to divert there. So I made a decision on my route to go into Drummond. Now that isn't an official part of the route. I just came off it slightly to get a few supplies and things like that. And from that route, I could have just carried on straight to Loch Lomond, boom. I'd have flown on that first day even further. But I made the decision to go up Conic Hill. Was it worth it? Yes, I'd say yes. The views are fantastic. It's not too bad getting up there. It's a little bit of a faff from Drummond. You've got to go through a bit of woodland and stuff. It's a bit of a faff. But if you stay to the official route, you'll make your way up there. Don't forget to tag the true summit. Watch my video to know what I mean. Some great views up there, but it is hard on your legs coming down, so just be aware of that. It's quite rocky, quite steep steps and things like that. So if you don't think that's for you, don't feel pressurized. You don't have to do that, but just bear in mind that when you're plotting your route, maybe you want 2 alternatives so you know which way you're going to go. But that's one thing to bear in mind. I'll mention some other sections on the route that are notable. Loch Lomond, It's further than you think. Woo! That is a trek, Loch Lomond, and the ground is particularly tough. The first section's really nice. Got the water, you've got little beaches, things like that. It's fantastic. But the further you get into it, I'd say the last third of Loch Lomond is very, very tough going. Now, I had beautiful weather, but I have seen videos online where it's been flooded and people have been walking through water. So really, really do take that into consideration with your planning to make sure you know, are you going to camp? Are you going to stay in huts? You're not going to tackle that in one big section. So just bear that in mind. That's an important thing. Also, if you are wild camping, you can camp anywhere in Scotland. However, some sections of Loch Lomond are restricted and you do need a permit. So I didn't have a permit, so I found it absolutely fine. There were sections before it, like you saw in my video. There were sections after it, in between, things like that. But you can go online and get a permit. But I think you've got to know what day you're going to be there. So again, it should go into your planning. Another couple of sections along the route, Rannoch Moor. That's a particularly quite long and open section. Moors, you know, really open land. So be aware of that. Then you've got Devil's Staircase. I found it fine, but I know a lot of people struggle with that. That's quite a steep section up and a long section down, quite hard on the legs. So a lot of people tackle that in one go. But, you know, if you stay at the King's House just before it, give yourself plenty of time because it's quite steep going up. It's going to, you know, use your trekking poles, get a bit of momentum. But coming down is, it's a toughie. I struggled with my legs on that one. It's Scotland, expect rain. I had beautiful weather, but I did plan this. Literally the day before, I saw we had a weather window. It was fantastic. Didn't have a drop of rain. It was beautiful. I come back with sunburn. It was fantastic. But in Scotland, it probably is going to rain and it could batter it down. So make sure you take the right kit, you know where you're going to stay, you plan things out to make sure you've not over-egged yourself as well. You know, if you're going in a time where the weather isn't quite as favourable, maybe you should be breaking that into some shorter sections just to make sure you can achieve it. But bear those in mind. And again, you also might want to change your route depending on that weather as well, whether you want to do Conic Hill or not. There are two main times of the year where people tend to do this route because they try and avoid the dreaded Scotland midge, which I've never experienced, but yeah, you've just got to be careful. And that is typically around April, May. You're okay. Maybe even to the end of May, you're pushing it a little bit. And then also later on in the year, so September, October, things like that. Although people do it all year round, people do it over winter and things. I probably wouldn't advise that. If you're going to do it in the summer periods, bear in mind, it's going to be busier, probably more people around doing day hikes and things like that, but you're going to suffer with midges, the dreaded midge. So just be aware of it. Take things like midge nets. I'll leave a link below to some cheap ones on Amazon that I have. I had one in my bag just in case, but midge nets, you could even get a midge sort of jacket, you know, midge spray. There's these midge cones that you can get and burn. Again, I'll try and leave a link below for remember to do it. But any sort of midge protection is worth bearing in mind for Scotland, even in those other times of the year as well, because they could make or break your hike. Right, we're getting there now, not too much more. Right, next section, I'm going to say mindset. What do I mean by mindset? Depending how you're doing this hike, let's say you're doing this solo, you're in your own head, and it's a good thing. It can be good and bad, but just be aware of it. This is all I'm saying. Have a think in advance. Because when you're on a hike like this, I've done a lot of long distance hikes. This might be your first and you're worried about it. Can I do it? How am I going to feel? But you've got to be able to motivate yourself. It's really important to keep yourself positive. Remind yourself why you're doing it, have your reasons, because you need that reason to get up in the morning. When the weather's coming in, it's shit, you're tired, your legs are sore, to get up and hike and push yourself. There's some challenging sections. On the whole, I think it's a fairly achievable hike. You know, I've done a lot more difficult hikes, so it's a really, really nice one. There's great views, lots of good people to talk to, stuff like that. And I can just promise you, it's always worth it. When you get back from this, you'll feel such an achievement. The way I tackle these hikes, it's amazing for my mental health. I enjoy them, the challenge, being out there, pushing yourself, the views, the people. The people's a big one. Talk to people. That's what you remember when you get back. Yes, you remember, oh, I remember that view. I remember Loch Lomond, that was tough, but you remember the conversations you've had, people's stories, people you've met. Great for me being a YouTuber because I tend to, people will pick me out or spot to me, chat to them, hear their stories, why are they doing it? great. The other side of things is obviously with injuries as well. Now, I suffered on mine, and mentally it was tough. It was tough because I felt physically, in my head, my body, apart from that leg, I felt, you know, I was fine. I found the hike pretty easy, but my leg was really holding me back, which affects you mentally to think, oh, can I go on? Now, yeah, I knew I'd go on. If I had to crawl and finish, I would. But don't be afraid if you need to back out as well. If you're injured, you know, the mountain's always there, the hike's always there for another day. So, you know, maybe you want to take a bit of music to keep you motivated, or take a book for at night so you're not bored, download a film on your phone. Just have a little think in advance, because, you know, your mindset of doing these is important. You've got to look after yourself. Right, this next section, I'm just going to talk about injuries, what to do on your route and how to look after yourself and what you take. So firstly, on this route, I took a first aid kit. It's in my gear video, very, very small, very basic. What I would advise taking is take a knee sleeve and even an ankle sleeve. And why? Because, you know, you probably are going to get little bits of niggles along the route, and I have plenty of those, and I just wish I'd taken an extra one. Now, luckily, at that Bean Glass campsite, I managed to pick up an ankle sleeve, which helped, but got to look after yourself on this. I used Compeed, so I had a few little rubs and things here and there for the first time I've ever had, probably with the terrain. So look after yourself. You know, if you find yourself having a hot spot, stop, look after it. But taking things like Compeed, Leuco tape. My top tip with Compeed, they're very, very sticky, they're amazing, but what you find is they unpeel at the sides a little bit, and when you've got your socks on, that sticks to your socks. Oh my God, it makes it a nightmare. You can't get it off your socks. You have glue, sticks to your feet. Really be aware of it. So my top tip, if you ever use a Compeed, put another bit of tape over it. Maybe Leuco tape, maybe a plaster, whatever you want, but put some tape around the outside. So when it's inevitably peeling up a little bit, it's not going to stick to your sock. My injury, I suffered with shin splints. I was in absolute agony, as you saw from the video. When I got home, I obviously had to get the coat. I had to drive home. Oh, severe pain in my right leg, but I drove home, and the next day I could not walk on my leg. At one stage I ended up in A&E having an x-ray. I thought I could have had a break in it because I couldn't walk. I was in severe pain. My leg was so swollen, my shin, my ankle, I couldn't move my foot. So yeah, I was in a hell of a lot of pain, but I've rested, relaxed, I've had crutches, I've had painkillers, I've had all sorts of stuff, but I have now recovered. Things feel well, but I will always be aware of that. Now, what caused it? I'm really not sure. Watching back on the videos, I'd say it was a mixture of the terrain. I obviously didn't train for this. I just did it off a whim, and I was doing high mileage. I had a knee injury that I was nursing, and it was on the same foot where I had this other one. So I think I was kind of limping through the hike, protecting my knee and overdoing it, and that maybe caused my injury. I did notice watching the videos back, it was like the bend in my foot that first started, and that caused my shin splints. So that also could be my choice of footwear. I wore my Ultra Timps for this, which are 0 drop. I wear Ultras all the time, but that's the first time I've used one for such a long distance and such high mileage. So I need to look at that to see whether that had an impact on my shin splints. It could well have done. And obviously footwear is a big one. You know, wear what you're comfortable in because you're going to be doing high mileage. But that's a little update on injuries. Look after yourself on the trail. Right, and in summary, that is everything. Hopefully that's given you lots more information. If you've been nervous about doing it, you had a few questions, I hope I've answered some of those for you. By all means, do watch the series if you've not. It'll give you a real good understanding of what it's like, the highs, the lows, some of the non-sexy bits, some of the good bits, you know, so you get a good feel for what the trail is like, because it is a good, you know, it is a good trek. But do your planning, make sure you know what you're doing in advance. I didn't, but that isn't for everyone. Have a good idea of how many days you want to do it over. A big one is your kit. Really, really look at your kit and decide what you're putting in that bag. Is it needed? Is it essential? By all means, use my kit video for ideas, but don't overpack. You really don't need to. Just think, on this hike, you're doing a lot of mileage. Everything that's lighter on your back is going to be lighter on your shoulders, on your back, on your legs, and it's just going to make it more enjoyable. Whatever you've got, really look at it 2 times, 3 times, and think, do I need that? Could I switch that out and get something a little bit lighter? Have I got a friend who's got a piece of kit? I might be able to borrow that off them. Am I going with somebody else? Should we share a tent rather than have one each? You know, just look at ways you can save a bit of weight, make things nice and comfortable, but don't go spending too much money. If you want any advice, any comments, leave them below. Other people will help you as well, and I'll try and answer them. But that's it for now. I will see you on another trail soon. Like and subscribe, and also if you feel like you get something from my videos and you're enjoying them, I have opened up YouTube memberships. It's just your opportunity, if you want to help support, and it gives you a little bit back as well. There's a few levels in there. One of them will give you some early access to videos, things like that, a few little perks, but have a look. Anything that I make through that just helps me get out hiking, keep making these videos. But don't worry, if now's not the time that you're able to support, I will still be making these videos. I'll still be here next Monday at 8 PM for you. But if this is your time, thanks in advance and get subscribed. So thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. Peace.